Most of the development happened in Miami because of developers deciding that this was the area to develop, and that they put their marketing behind it and a vision behind it. When I arrived here, the focus was on South Beach, and there was a concerted effort with developers such as Tony Goldman and Craig Robbins and others who banded together with a vision of preserving the Deco district, but also building on what was already organically happening, in that the fashion photographers had discovered South Beach, and of course the Miami Vice, and which had helped reposition it, and and a lot of artists were coming down. It was a time of in the early '90s when the art world was pretty dead. In New York, artists were leaving it. There were a lot of art. They are also escaping because so many of the sadness of so many of their friends who had died of AIDS. So there was, one of the first to come down here was Jack Pearson, and they were here, and so that altogether helped change this vision. And you also had then a city, Miami Beach, back it. We also saw the same thing happening with Wynwood. Tony Goldman put his focus there. Tony was a great visionary, and but even before he got there, David Lombardi had also had this vision of what do you do with these warehouse spaces. But it was a concerted effort. Tony Goldman started buying up with Goldman Properties a lot of the property, so that it could be developed in a kind of organic vision way. And we saw the same thing happen with the design district with Greg Robbins, having a vision and realizing it takes a time, but it also takes an enormous amount of marketing and connecting. North Miami, which has always to me been in a prime spot for development, it didn't have that concerted group of developers with the aim of the potential for the area. There was also issues of zoning where that needed to be changed, which eventually were, and now can be capitalized, that buildings can go over a certain height. So there was things that were purposely in place through the city that were in place in the 70s because they didn't want to happen in North Miami what had happened on Biscayne Boulevard with all the high rises. So that in a way stalls the development process. Development was being pushed through city rather than a consortium of developers who had a vision. Now, I look around, and first of all, having just moved from LA, where we always talked about great freeway access, you can't ask for better freeway access for North Miami. It's direct, right, from I-95 and on the way to the beaches. How better can that be? It was the biggest tract of land east of 95. The houses, they're small, but they're on big, probably half-acreage land. All this land. And so part of it was because of the zoning, that it couldn't get going once they got that zoning taken care of, the recession hit. I think there's been a lot of bad timing. But the major thing is there hasn't been that consortium of developers with a vision that looked and said, wow, look at all this land here. Let's try to keep the specialness of it and build on that. And from my experience, it's very hard to just have a city, especially a small city, to try to do it. They did have the vision to put the museum there in the first place. The museum really did become the heart of that particular city, especially with the children. We had very active children and teen program. That touched on, which had reverberations not only immediately, but for the art industry itself, one of the things I realized about my field is it's very homogenous. I'm talking about the museum field, the directors, the curators, and if it was going to change, it had to start with the kids in school. So 98, I launched the Junior Docent Program, which was a seminar program for high school kids, and it was predominantly the kids in the neighborhood. It was free, and they were introduced to contemporary art at a college level. This wasn't sit in a class, raise your hand, take notes. This is conversation. This is spending an hour with Frank Stella. You know, spending an hour with Raymond Pettibone. These kids got incredible access, and it grew organically. For instance, well, a number of them, a good percentage of them were Haitian, and I was learning from the people who do admission to college. I said, how are the kids doing in admissions? They said, well, the Haitian children were uncomfortable in the interview of that culturally they were quiet. You know, they meant, you know, when you're with an adult, you're quiet and reserved, and you look down, and that had was not helping them in their interviews. So I went back to our educators. I said, okay, we're going to put into our program the art of the interview. And they're going to learn interviewing techniques. They're going to interview artists. They're going to interview each other. They're going to interview our staff. And we're going to publish these. So we started the MOCA zine. It was an art, so that we can emphasize writing. And these weren't necessarily kids who were aiming to be writers, but the importance to learn how to write your opinion, to do an interview. And we would produce a MOCA zine every year. And so the first editor of it, she truly excelled, did an amazing job. She graduated high school and got a scholarship to Stanford University in art history. She graduated from Stanford, went right to San Francisco Museum of Modern Art in education, and then a few years later applied for graduate school at Columbia University, where she is just finishing her dissertation. And she started at MOCA. We've had a lot of success stories like that, and that was, it took about 10 years, but that's where they started. I was showing artists towards the end of when I was there, whose first experience of art or a museum was when they came to MOCA when they were kids, and now they were showing at the museum. But we would do every year. I would commission Pablo Cano, who is truly unique artist, creates these amazing marionettes out of found objects, and would have music or an opera along with it, and we would bring in buses and buses of kids to see these productions. So one of these artists who I was showing towards the end, she said, I can't believe that I'm showing a museum where I had my first experience of a museum, and I'm showing alongside Pablo Cano, which was who I saw on my first trip. So we're now seeing this whole generation that grew up not only with MOCA but with all the museums, going to the schools, having this incredible access, knowing that art matters. I think the fact that what Art Basel did with all the press and all the media was that it made, for the general audience, the realization that art, and particularly contemporary art, matters. And that shifted the positioning of the area.